I'll never forget the terror I felt when I realized that someone had been watching me for months. And it started in the most innocent way. I moved into a new apartment complex a few years ago. It was a nice building, relatively quiet, and seemed like the perfect place to live on my own. The neighbors were mostly elderly folks or young professionals. So I didn't think much about it when I first moved in. But then I noticed him. There was a man in the apartment across the hall from mine who seemed off. He was always in his apartment at odd hours, and I would occasionally hear strange noises through the walls. It wasn't anything alarming at first, just the typical sounds of someone being home, but then it became a little more noticeable. Sometimes I would hear what sounded like him pacing back and forth, or what seemed like him talking to someone, though when I looked out my peephole, I never saw anyone with him. I was never sure if it was just my imagination. But I started to feel like he was watching me. I'd catch glimpses of him through the corner of my eye whenever I was in the hallway. He never said anything to me directly. But his eyes would linger just a little too long, like he was waiting for me to speak first. It made me uncomfortable, but I chalked it up to him just being socially awkward. Then, one night, it escalated. I came home late, and as I was walking down the hallway, I noticed his door was slightly ajar. The hallway light flickered, casting strange shadows across the walls, and as I passed, I couldn't help but glance inside his apartment. That's when I saw him, standing in the dark, just inside the doorway, staring directly at me. He didn't move, he just stood there, watching me, with an unreadable expression on his face. I quickly walked past, trying not to make eye contact, and rushed into my apartment. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I locked the door behind me. I tried to shake it off, but from that moment on, I couldn't stop feeling like I was being watched. Every time I left my apartment, I'd notice his door slightly ajar, and I'd catch a glimpse of him in the hallway or peeking out from behind a corner. He never said anything, but his presence was always there. One night, after I had been feeling particularly paranoid for days, I decided to leave my apartment and take a quick walk to clear my head. When I came back, my door was slightly ajar. I knew I'd locked it before I left, but there it was, standing open. I froze. I immediately stepped inside and checked every room, heart racing, but nothing was out of place. That was the first time I felt certain that something was wrong. I stayed awake that night, listening for sounds, and I swear I heard footsteps outside my door, but when I checked, no one was there. The next day, I decided to report my neighbor to the building management, mentioning that he was acting strange. They promised to look into it. A few days later, I was told that he had been evicted for violating building policies. I never got the full story, but shortly after, I found out that the guy had been secretly filming people in the building, not just me, but several other tenants. He had hidden cameras in the hallways, in the elevator, and even outside people's doors. When they investigated his apartment, they found hundreds of hours of footage, mostly of people, including myself, walking through the halls. He'd been watching us all, tracking our routines, and documenting our every move. I don't live in that building anymore. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't reported him, but I've never felt safe in a place since. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that I'm still being watched.